Okay, Mayor, you may begin when you're ready.
Good evening. Welcome to our January 25th, 2021 regular Matthews Board of Commissioners meeting. I'd like to start with some introductions. First, we have Commissioner Dave Bland, Town Attorney Charles Buckley, Town Manager Hazen Blodgett, Commissioner Ken McCool, Commissioner Larry Whitley, Commissioner Jeff Miller, Commissioner John Urban, Mayor Pro Tem Renee Garner, Planning Director Jay Camp, Assistant Town Manager Becky Hawk, Town Clerk Lori Canapino, and our Communications Coordinator Maureen Keith is also on. I'd like to remind everyone that due to the Governor's COVID-19 orders, this meeting of the Matthews Board of Commissioners will be conducted remotely using the Zoom virtual meeting platform. The Town of Matthews is committed to transparency and robust public participation during these challenging times. I'll remind everyone also that the mayor and commissioners will vote on each item by roll call vote, meaning each member will be polled to individually state their vote for the record. They will also raise their hand or otherwise indicate their vote visually to indicate how they're voting. Now we'd like to move on to the invocation, and I'd like to call on Commissioner Miller to take care of that item.
All right, give me one moment, please, to pull it up. Sorry, I was a little bit late. For those who choose to share in prayer, let us bow our heads. Dear God, you have said that where two or more are gathered in your name, that you will be with them. We ask you to be with us now. Bless us with your guidance towards the Matthews Town Council tonight. May we prove worthy of the confidence placed in us by our fellow citizens. May we be honest in our actions and make the best decisions, not only for today, but for the years to come. Please help the country heal from the divisiveness that we've witnessed during this last election cycle. Please also comfort and protect our healthcare workers on the front lines against COVID. Freedom is not free, so please keep watch over the men and women in the military, police, and fire departments as they serve and protect all of us. We thank you for our civil liberties and our freedoms, for the privileges and opportunities you've afforded us. Amen.
Mayor, you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you, Commissioner Miller. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 4, the presentation of the GFOA Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. For this, we'll ask Ms. Hawk to present this.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. I think that, yep, I see her there. We have with us tonight Senior Finance Specialist Lindsay Wiggs, who is here to accept this recognition on behalf of the Finance Department. So what we have in front of you tonight is our official award that I pulled off the wall to virtually present tonight. But this is presented from the Government Finance Officers Association, and this is recognizing the Town of Matthews for their comprehensive annual financial report, that it qualifies for GFOA's Certificate of Achievement for Excellence. And this is the 22nd consecutive year that the town has received this designation, which is a tremendous honor and one that not many other localities within the state of North Carolina share. So just want to thank Lindsay on behalf of the town for her continued hard work in dealing with all of these reports and getting all the correct information to the auditors to be able to represent the town well, to continue to receive this designation. So Lindsay, on behalf of the town, I'm virtually congratulating you on a job well done. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Becky. I'd just like to say that, accounting gets this kind of a bad rap of being kind of stuffy and boring. And I can say working for the town of Matthews is never boring. The board and the manager's office and our lovely auditors always keep me on my toes. The wheels are always turning with these guys, and they're very innovative, and they're on top of things. So I really appreciate this award and you recognizing me, and I look forward to working for the town of Matthews for a few more years to come. So thank you very much.
Good.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Lindsay. That's fantastic, a fantastic record. And I can tell you from speaking to some of my colleagues that are mayors, some of them aren't quite so lucky with having so few complaints in the accounting department. I don't think I've ever heard of one. So you guys must be handling everything. That's great. Make our jobs
Thank you.
easy. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to agenda item number 5, receive the COVID-19 update. We do have a very special guest tonight, Mecklenburg County Public Health Director Gibby Harris. And just the other day, I had to send a few emails to Ms. Harris, and I felt kind of bad about doing it because I know she gets just pestered to death by everybody. So Gibby, please know that we only contact you when only necessary, but you're doing a great job, and we're anxious to hear your report.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for that. And we hear from lots of people, but it's important for us because we don't always know exactly what's going on throughout the county, and that's how we learn, and that's how we can make adjustments to things that we need to do. So I appreciate the collaboration that we've had with the towns throughout all of this, really want to, Hazen has been great to work with as well as the staff, and just want to thank you all for your support and the work that you've done around this throughout the year, because it has been a year. And we're not done yet, unfortunately. So I'm going to give you a brief update, and then I'll be happy to entertain any questions or conversation that you'd like to have. Just a quick update with our numbers. As of the end of the day today, Mecklenburg County has experienced 82,444 cases since March and 747 deaths. Unfortunately, right now we have 66 active outbreaks in Mecklenburg County in our long-term care facilities. That also includes a couple of clusters in some of our shelters as well as our schools. The good news is that a number of our metrics are moving down. They're moving in the direction that we want them to. They're moving slowly, so we're keeping a very close eye on them, but our hospitalizations are down a little bit. Our percentages are down a little bit. We're at 12.3% positivity rate, which is an improvement. And we're seeing about 477 cases per 100,000 right now. I want to speak a little bit specifically about the town of Matthews. Matthews, as of January 10th, has experienced 2,401 cases. You've got a total of 4 outbreaks ongoing right now in long-term care facilities, and you've experienced 49 deaths. I want to give you a little bit of just sort of to set the stage for that, though. In December, early December, you'd had 1,476 cases. So you're up to 2,401. And at that point in December, your average cases per day were 68. Right now, your average cases per day are 118. So it's consistent with what we've seen throughout the county, that our numbers have been going up. And unfortunately, over the past week, you've had 236 cases, which is the highest number of cases you've experienced in a week. So the main point I'm trying to make here is that we continue to have a lot of virus in our community. And that is the reason that we implemented, or at least put out, the public health directive asking people to stay home unless they really need to be out and about, if there's some sort of work that they need to do, or if there's essential service that they need to access. But the problem is, every time you go out of your house, you're potentially being exposed because of the amount of virus we have in our county. You've probably heard that Mecklenburg County was identified with the first case of the UK variant over the past week. We have said before that that variant was probably in our community, as much travel as we have, and the fact that that variant has been around since September, but we have the first confirmed case in North Carolina. We know that that variant is more infectious than the virus that we've had in our community up to this point. It spreads more easily. And unfortunately, we're concerned of the impact that that's going to have on our long-term care facilities, but also in any other environment where people are coming together. The other concern about this variant is they've said from the beginning that they did not feel that it was more deadly than the virus that we had, but the studies that they're doing now show that that might not be true. We don't know that for a fact, but the point is these variants are different than the virus that we've had, which means people have not been exposed to it and have the potential of being exposed. This particular variant seems to be receptive to the vaccines that we have right now. But you might have also seen today that the variant from Brazil was first recognized today in Minnesota. And there are questions about whether it is susceptible to this vaccine. So I think the main point I'm trying to make here is that people need to be cautious. We still have virus in our community. We still know that people are susceptible to the virus in our community, and we need everyone to do their part when it comes to the prevention measures that we know work. Unfortunately, I was listening to some of the conversation before this got started, and a few folks were talking about accessing the vaccine. I'm really pleased to hear that you've been able to access it, but we also know that we do not have sufficient vaccine in the state. We're not even sure we have it in the country at this point. We're still learning more about that from the Biden folks, and from the CDC. But we do know that we don't have the amount of vaccine we need in Mecklenburg County to vaccinate everybody that needs it, or even everybody that wants it. The state has been trying to allocate vaccine based on a lot of different metrics. There was a lot of conversation today with the state. There's some counties that didn't receive any vaccine at all this week. Some of that is due to the big event that's happening at the Bank of America this weekend. And the state had agreed to make sure they had the vaccine that they needed for that event. We're hoping that that will vaccinate a lot of people in our community, but we still know that just in the 65 to 74 age range, we have 80,000 people in Mecklenburg County that fit in that category. And 20,000 vaccine is not going to go a long way. The health department's been receiving just shy of 2,000 doses a week. That doesn't go very far. So the main point here is we're working as hard as we can to get the vaccine out to the community, and we're advocating with the state as hard as we can to get the vaccine that we need. But we still need people to do the things that are going to protect them from this virus right now. And that includes, you've heard it 1,000 times, but I'm going to say it again, wearing your mask, socially distancing, and staying at home if you don't need to be out and about. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have as I can. And if I can't, I'll be happy to try to get that information for you. So I'll stop right there for now.
Well, thank you, Gibby. I'm happy to report that my parents, who are in their 80s, are getting their vaccines this Saturday at Bank of America, and previously were scheduled like in April. So it's very, very nice that 15,000, a lot of people I know are going to get vaccinated at that event. Are there any questions for Gibby? Commissioner Bland.
I don't know if you know the answer to this question or not, but as far as like the one at the stadium, Panther Stadium, where they're doing it, they have drive up, and they also have people that can walk to go into the facility. I think. Where is the drive up thing? How is that being set up, or where can you find out that information?
So the first thing I want to say, though, is that the event is by appointment. So this is not just open to anybody and everybody, right? And as I understand it, all of the drive-up appointments have been filled. So right now what they have available are the walk-ups. They've got this set up in a way so that the drive-up will come around the front of the building, and they have a number of lanes that cars will drive in. And those folks in those cars will then drive just past the building after they get their vaccine and have a place where they can wait for the 15 minutes that you have to wait to make sure you don't have any reaction to it. So right now they've got that set up well. I'm feeling pretty good about the process that they've put together, and expect that this will be a successful event.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner McCool, did you have a question?
Yeah, kind of a two-part question. First, how many vaccines in the county have been administered? And then second, what is kind of our progression looking like? I know it's kind of touchy, not sure, but when are we, do you think there's going to be more vaccines coming in, progressively? What's that look like?
That's a great question. I don't have the exact number for the total that we've provided. One of the challenges we have with understanding that is vaccine comes in to our department and to the healthcare systems. The healthcare systems receive it for their entire system. It's not just for Mecklenburg County. So the numbers that they get are provided in other counties as well as here. The event that they had this past weekend that Atrium had out at the Speedway, have no idea how many of those 16,000 that were vaccinated are Mecklenburg County residents. So that number is a little bit challenging for us right now. The state system that we have to put all our data into is not providing local data back yet. All they have is statewide data. So we're still working on that, and hopefully in the next week or two, we'll have more local data that we can help people understand how many folks are actually being vaccinated in the county. The challenge we have moving forward, what we heard from the state today is that they are guaranteeing each county will have vaccine over the next 3 weeks. That's about as far out as they can go with a guarantee. And they're going to provide that to the counties based on population density. And again, I'm not sure exactly how that works with healthcare systems since they cover more than one county. But based on the amount of vaccine that the state says they were going to put out, we're looking at about 8,400 doses for Mecklenburg once a week for the next 3 weeks. That didn't go very far. It's just really challenging because we know we have so many more people that want to be vaccinated. All you have to do is see how many times our phones have crashed every time we've tried to open up appointments to know how many people really want to be vaccinated. So we're committed to getting it out just as quickly as we get it in. And I can tell you both from the hospital systems as well as from the health department that our vaccine goes out in the week that they give it to us. We have nothing left at the end of the week before we get our next allocation. And we're committed to continue to do that. And until we know more from the federal government, how much vaccine they actually have to get out, the state doesn't know what they're going to receive.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Are you seeing a better response to the vaccine as far as people getting it? I know when we had Jason Byrne from Novant on, he said only about 50% of the staff were interested in getting, that were eligible, were interested in getting it. Are you seeing that same thing continue?
It's been interesting to watch that. Sort of the reaction in the beginning was a good number of people were like, they wanted to wait and see. Let a few other people get it first and let's see what happens. But as we've moved through this over the past month, we're seeing more people being receptive to the vaccine. So the hospital systems, I think, are seeing more of their staff being vaccinated. We've been working a lot with the EMTs and paramedics. And initially we were seeing sort of an iffy response, but that's really picked up over the last couple of weeks. So I think as the vaccine continues to roll out, people are seeming to get a little more comfortable with it. I know we still have some populations in the county who struggle with that, and we're continuing to try to educate and get information out and working with those leaders in the community that they trust to try to help people understand that this vaccine is safe and that it's important for them to get it.
Just as a follow-up comment to that, I would hope that those that have direct interaction with those that are sick or incapacitated would take the initiative to get the vaccine as a matter of, an abundance of caution. I don't think it can be mandated, but it sure would be appreciated if they would do that. Are there other questions or comments? Commissioner Miller? You're on mute, sir.
Thank you. Sorry for that. Ms. Harris, thank you for all that you do. I have two questions. What is the percentage of hospitalization of those that are diagnosed with COVID? What is the percentage of hospitalization? And what is the percentage of death rate of those?
Those are great questions. And I don't know that I have those numbers right in front of me. I can get those for you. I will tell you that our mortality rate is pretty low, which is great. And it has stayed low, although unfortunately over the last 3 weeks, we've seen that rate increase some. And possibly that's a result of the numbers of people that we're seeing and the percentage of folks that have been in the hospital. I can get both of those numbers for you, and I'll provide those back through Hazen so that you have those available to you. I just don't have those in front of me right now.
The reason I ask is because more and more people are getting vaccinated. My wife is a healthcare worker. She's been vaccinated. Some suspect that one or more of us may have had COVID back in February before we even knew what it was, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm questioning the severity of the illness as far as how many go to the hospital and how many die from it versus the shutdowns. I'm just trying to weigh the pros and cons, and that would be helpful.
I think that I'll get the numbers for you, but my perspective on that, the folks in our community who are most vulnerable are the ones who have suffered from this the most. And in many cases, those are individuals who really have no defense against this virus. 50% of our deaths have come from people who are in long-term care facilities. And what happens is the staff who are out in the community, out and about and exposed, and come into the facility with the virus and then expose those individuals who have very little immune response and really are already ill to begin with. 50% of our deaths are among those folks. Okay. So I think that the issue is we never know. I mean, we just over the past 2 weeks, we've had an individual who is 22 years old in our community who died from COVID. And we have had a 17-year-old in our community who has died from COVID. You never know who's going to have that bad reaction. And is going to have long-term effects from COVID. And so it's hard for me to say that it's not serious and that it's not something that we should pay attention to, because you don't want that to be your family member to be the one who has the bad reaction. Or and we see across the country as well, younger people who are dying from this. So it's a serious virus that really knows no barriers.
Thank you.
And the majority of the people are not going to get seriously ill and are going to recover from it. But as I said, we've had 747 deaths in Mecklenburg County. That's 747 we didn't need to have. And that's just not acceptable as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you.
And could you repeat again how many died in Matthews? Did you give that number?
That number is 49, excuse me, 49 as of the 10th of January. So that's almost 50 of your neighbors.
We're a pretty small town, so that number is significant to me. Any other questions or comments? Okay, really appreciate you coming here tonight. I'd like to remind everybody I'm sorry, Commissioner McCool, do you have a comment?
Hazen, I think, was trying to say something.
Sorry, Hazen, go ahead.
Well, just want to make it quick. Gibby Harris has been leading us through this for almost a year, Mayor, and she's done a great job. Some of us hear her at least twice a week, sometimes more. She's been very accessible. And I feel like we're lucky at the county level to have the kind of leadership she's providing us.
Well, Hazen, you stole my thunder because that's what I was going to say as well. I wanted to remind everyone that Gibby is kind of the tip of the spear, but she is not personally responsible for how many vaccines we get and things like that. I've seen some of the vitriol on social media aimed at even some of us, people totally unrelated to that activity. But I recognize you're working a lot of long hours, and we really do appreciate all you're doing. So thank you so much, and appreciate you coming and talking to us tonight and being available for questions as well. So thank you.
Happy to be here. And again, I appreciate everything that y'all are doing as well. This is a team approach. It has been since the beginning. So that's how we're getting through it.
Yeah, we're keeping our fingers crossed that soon, with a lot more people getting vaccines, we can return to some sense of normalcy soon. We'll just leave it at
Great.
that.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to someone I didn't introduce at the top of our meeting. Our Fire Chief and Emergency Operations Center Chief Rob Kinnenberg. Rob, do you have an update for us?
Oh, thank you, Mayor. There's not much I can add that Ms. Harris hasn't hit on. Continuing our norm of looking back 2 weeks, we've seen cases increase 20% and deaths increase 9%. But as Gibby said, the encouraging news is that we seem to have hit a peak about mid-January. And since mid-January, we've seen reductions in our 7-day new case average, our positivity rate, our percentage positive per 100,000 population. They've all declined in the last 2 weeks. The number of patients hospitalized has gone down and the number of patients in ICU has gone down. But these are small victories. We're, again, in no means, we're out of the woods. The vaccination effort, I'm happy to say we've had some input into that. And Matthews has 39 EMTs participating in the vaccination effort at Bojangles and county task forces and at Medic vaccinating other first responders. As of January 14th, the number of people seeking testing actually dropped by half. Our best day testing was January 14th, and by the 20th, we had cut that rate in half. So the focus has definitely switched from people seeking testing to seeking vaccination. As Gibby said, the difficult part there is demand outstrips supply. It's a concerted effort with the hospital systems and the county. There are many different streams, and some of them are very confusing. Some of them are getting rave reviews. So we look forward to those efforts to ramp up. As far as vaccinations of our EMTs, currently about 50% of our EMTs have taken the vaccine, either the first or both doses. There is a lot of concern, hesitancy, but as we get into vaccinating the rank and file of police and fire, I think we'll see those numbers edge up. Again, we're about half right now. We continue to push public health for a Matthews area location, but until the vaccine stream increases, there's not a whole lot we can do, and it is a very labor-intensive activity. I heard today that to vaccinate 1,600 people at the Speedway took 1,500 volunteers over the course of 3 days. So it is very labor-intensive. But we'll continue to stay involved. at the EOC and policy group level, and continue to push forward with the vaccination program and getting the word out to the community.
Rob, do you know how many people have been vaccinated in the U.S. total?
I do not. That's one of those numbers we get every Monday, and you really have to be awake when that number rolls out. It's quite large, but I can look it up.
Well, that's all
quickly
right.
for you.
Last I heard, it was in excess of 20 million. I'm just saying it to make a point. I think the safety of it, there's a pretty large statistical sample that shows that the vaccination is safe if 20 plus million people have taken it. So I would
Oh,
hope those
definitely.
that were resistant to it would consider that there's a large group of people that have taken it without, I don't think there's been too many ill effects that I've heard of. So
No.
are there any other questions for Chief Kinnenberg? Commissioner McCool?
How do all of the EMTs want to be vaccinated? I know, what's that percentage look like?
About 50%, but that's pretty consistent. We heard that from Jason with Novant last time. I think you'll see peer pressure drive the numbers up, and we continue to strongly advocate for vaccinations of all of our people. It is a generational thing. The boomers and older are lining up to get them, and they're happy to get vaccinated. The younger generations are a little more hesitant.
That's a little surprising to me. I would have expected the exact opposite, but
That's what I
interesting.
was thinking too. Well, I guess this was kind of a question I had for Gibby as well, if you don't mind, is what can we do from a municipal standpoint to kind of get the word out and help ease the fears of the folks who are scared of the vaccine? Because I've talked to a lot of people that are scared of it, and it's hard to talk to someone about it. So how do we do that, and how can we be a helper and an advocate for that?
I appreciate that question. It is challenging. I think that a couple of the main messages that I think everybody needs to hear is that vaccines are not new, right? We've been making vaccines for a long time. And these vaccines are a little bit different. They've used a little bit different method, but it's still a vaccine. And they know how to make vaccines. And they have put them through the clinical trials to make sure that they're safe and that they're also efficacious. And these vaccines, the two that we have out right now, Moderna and Pfizer, have really high efficacy rates compared to other vaccines that people take all the time. So from that perspective, the other thing to understand, especially about the Pfizer vaccine, because that's what folks seem to be most afraid of, is it's a very fragile vaccine and it dissipates within the body very quickly. So it's there long enough to trigger that immune response and then it's gone. It's just gone. It doesn't linger. There are a number of documents that we've created, educational materials, those sorts of things that are on the county website that you can use to help educate other folks. Please make use of those, and we'll continue to develop those. We've got those in different languages. If you've got others in your community that need that, please take advantage of those. And if there's ever opportunities for us to speak to groups in your community that you think would be helpful to hear about the vaccine, let us know and we'll make somebody available to do that as well.
Yeah, I'd like to suggest that we put our attorney, Charles Buckley, and Chief Kinnenberg on a billboard, because they've both been vaccinated and seem to be doing all right. Anybody else on our board? I think that's the only folks that are eligible. Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
I have another question for Ms. Harris that I just thought about. Does the county have literature that we can hand out? We still have some masks within Matthews that are that we're handing out. If there's some sort of paper material that can go with it to show proper mask wearing, things how could we get that? And
Yeah, I'll talk to staff and we'll get you some material. There is stuff on our website that can be, there are flyers and things like that you can take advantage of. But, so you're specifically looking for something around masks, the proper wearing of masks and those sorts of things?
yeah.
Okay. I'll get something to you. I'll be happy to make that available.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Renee, could you speak to, have you picked up those masks from Scott Banks?
He dropped off 2,000 last week. We had 500 at Town Hall. All of those have been distributed. He's bringing another 1,500, and I believe the fire department has 10,000, if not just slightly under that number. So I found it pretty easy to just email people and say, do you want masks, and get a positive response on that.
And the name of his company is White Knight, is that right?
White Knight Enterprise. They produce labware PPE and are, during this pandemic, have been also making masks.
So the reason I brought this to everyone's attention, I was going to mention this in my mayor's report, but this gentleman has graciously donated these masks, thousands of them, and we can make them available to commissioners if you want to give them out, or Commissioner Whitley if you want to pass them out at your church. So yeah, let's make them readily available. We're very grateful for this constituent that lives in Matthews that made this nice donation to the town. So if you're interested, contact Renee and she can get you in touch with them. Any other questions for Ms. Harris or Ms. Chief Kinneberg? All right, seeing none, again, thank you both. I really appreciate all your hard work. Move on to agenda item number 6. Mr. Manager, do we have any items to be added to the agenda tonight?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
That's the town clerk, Lori Canapino. Do we have any public comment?
No, sir.
All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 8. I will entertain a motion to recess the regular meeting for a public hearing on the preliminary assessment roll for Streamside Properties.
So moved. Second.
Motion from Commissioner Whitley, a second from Commissioner McCool. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner,
Yes.
Commissioner McCool,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes, sir.
and I vote yes as well. That passes unanimously. We now stand recessed. And who's going to present this tonight? Hazen?
Mayor, I
CJ,
can.
will you brief the board?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Thank you. Mayor and board, this is hopefully, tonight will be the last of the steps to move forward with the special assessment of Streamside subdivision. As you may recall, this was a subdivision that was mostly completed by the developer, but it was left unfinished. He did leave a $39,333 bond. The neighbors did petition the board to move forward with a special election at 79% of the cost for the repairs that was approved by the board. Our estimate was roughly $3,000 per lot. The special assessment, there were 16 lots. After all is said and done, the total ended up being $2,929.94 per lot. The residents of the subdivision have the choice of either paying for it all at once and not having to pay interest. I think that's in March 22nd, or they can pay over 8 years at a 5% interest rate per year. So that's all I have.
Yes, I have a question for the town manager. Hazen, I recall an item maybe being last added to our legislative agenda last year to go to the legislature to ask them to allow us to increase the bonds so this wouldn't happen to other residents. That fell off of I believe that wasn't on our legislative agenda this year, was it?
I got to check. Does
I
anybody?
don't think it was. It's very unfortunate that these residents of Matthews have to pay this due to the ineptitude of a developer that didn't do the right thing. So
Well, and just to be clear, what happened to General Assembly, there used to be enough of a percent, we used to have more discretion, us in the county, in setting these bonds. And then the General Assembly ratcheted our percentages down that create more opportunity for this, whatever, for people to get punished, my view of that.
Commissioner Bland.
I just say this is a real thing that I would really like to see us get our legislative people involved in, because you've seen it not only here, but in a lot of other areas. Bonds aren't very expensive for these businesses to get. All it does is keeps them honest. You know what I'm saying? You see bonds like auto dealer bonds and stuff like that. They've only got $50,000 coverage. That doesn't even cover the price of a car nowadays. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing that you've got involved with these. And so I really, really think this is an important issue. I think, thanks for bringing it back up to our attention.
Mayor, do you want to add it to the agenda? You want to add it back to the legislative agenda?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. If that's the consensus of the board, I think it is. I'd like to ask Town Attorney, Mr. Buckley, do you recall this coming up very often back when the bond was set up higher? You've been around our town for many years. I only recall this happening a couple times since I've been an elected official.
It's only occurred maybe 3 times in Matthews. And the one previous to this was Oscar Drive, which was about 4 or 5 years ago. Yep. And then there was one other, and I can't remember the name of the street right now, but there was only one other that I can remember where we went through the assessment process. Oh, it did happen in Hampton Green, and that never did get resolved.
Well, it's something I think we should add to our legislative agenda, because it does, it's unfortunate for some of our residents to have to pay this extra fee that the developer should have covered. Are there any questions or comments for CJ before we move on? Commissioner Miller.
Thank you. CJ, who was the home builder that ran it short of expectations? The reason I ask is because Brookwood, I believe it is, Home Builders LLC owns one property. And if they own one property and they were the developer, a lien could be placed on their home for the amount, to the best of my knowledge. I'm not an attorney, but I've played one on TV.
So the developer for this was Simmons and Byers LLC.
Okay.
And I think they had another corporation that they put together, or LLC that they put together, that did own that land. So this assessment will be going against that property as well as one of the 16 lots in the subdivision.
But it's a different LLC, and you can't hold them entirely responsible, as I understand it, correct?
That's for powers greater than me. I don't know.
Yeah. Thank you.
So CJ, does your letter show that LLC as one of the folks that owes $2,900?
It is for all the property owners. I can read back through it and look.
So we've got that on the assessment roll. Let's see, which is.
That's a good point from Commissioner Miller. If it's not on there, it absolutely should be.
Brookwood Home Building and Remodeling LLC is on there.
Okay. And then the next one is Simmons and Byers LLC.
Okay, that's on the next page, and I hadn't gotten there yet.
Good, very good. Good. So I think to button this up, we need to take a vote. Is that correct?
I think at this point, you're opening the public hearing for people to speak about this. And then you'll be doing the resolution later in the agenda.
That's right. Okay. So Lori, did we have anybody sign up for public comment?
We don't have any speakers, sir.
Okay. So if there's any other comments, questions about this, we'll entertain a motion to reconvene our regular meeting.
So move.
Second. Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Miller, a second from Commissioner Bland, I believe. Is that correct? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote to reconvene our regular meeting. Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner,
Yes.
Commissioner McCool,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. You know, I wonder what would happen if that didn't pass. We would just have to stay in this public hearing forever. Let's move on to item number 10, our consent agenda. I'll entertain a roll call vote to.
I make a motion, Mayor, that we approve consent agenda A through C. That's the shortest consent agenda I think I've ever seen.
I think you're
Yeah.
right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Miller. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner,
Yes.
Commissioner McCool,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
I vote yes. That passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 11, unfinished business. Consider a resolution confirming assessment roles for Springside Special Assessment. Here's where we'll take a roll call vote. So if there's any additional conversation or somebody'd like to make a motion, that'd be great.
I'll make a motion, Mayor, that we approve a resolution confirming assessment role of Streamside Special Assessment.
Okay. Do we need to reference the letter?
Reference the letter that CJ presented tonight.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Bland. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner,
Yes.
Commissioner McCool,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
I vote yes too. That passes unanimously. Thank you. I need one of those easy buttons that calls everybody's name. We'll move on to item 12A, new business. Receive fiscal year 2019-20 audit report. I believe we have Justin Allen from Martin Starnes and Associates.
Yes, good evening, council. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, great. Well, next slide, please. All right, I would just like to begin by saying thank you on behalf of Martin Starnes for allowing us the opportunity to present the audit and perform the audit as well. This is not a relationship that we take for granted, and we always enjoy working with everyone at the town of Matthews. First things first, the town of Matthews received an unmodified or a clean opinion for the fiscal year 2020. So what that means is basically within a reasonable assurance and with all material respects, the financial statements are not misleading. I would also like to take this time to thank the staff at the town of Matthews. So when we come in, it's a several month engagement, and everyone at the town with Lindsay, they are very cooperative in answering our questions. And I can assure you all, we do ask a ton of questions. So they're always very friendly in getting back to us via email or returning our calls. This year, they set up a nice, very large conference room for us to socially distance. That was very much appreciated by our staff. You guys went the extra lengths. We felt very safe while we were performing the audit. So I just wanted to also kind of throw that in there. We were very, very appreciative of that. Next slide, please. All right, to the numbers. Here we have the total fund balance of the general fund. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to present 3 years. So we have 2018, there was $11,481,073. Then in 2019, it increased 3.5% to $11,884,785. Then moving to 2020, it decreased right at $884,316. And that was a decrease of 7.4%. Next slide, please. Now, what this slide is going to do, this is going to give us the calculations for available fund balance in the general fund. So what we do, we start with the total fund balance of $11,469,000. Then you have to take out your non-spendable items of $114,980. Now, what the non-spendable amount, that represents prepaid items or inventory. Then you have that stabilization by state statute that is required for everyone. And that's a formula that involves your accounts receivables that are not offset by deferred revenues. And that amount is $1,529,483. What this breaks down to is an available fund balance of $9,356,006. You can see there, we did compare it to the available fund balance for the year ended 2019 of $10,248,120. And there was a decrease from 2019 to 2020 in available fund balance of $892,114. Next slide, please. Now, what we have here, we have the available fund balance as a percent of expenditures and transfers out for the general fund. And as you can see, we're comparing 2019 and 2020. 2019, it was right at 45%. And then in 2020, it was at 36%. Now, I oftentimes get the question, hey, Justin, what does this mean? Well, the LGC requires a minimum fund balance percentage of 8%. And what that means is 8% typically represents 1 month of expenditures. So right now, the town of Matthews has roughly 4.5 months of reserve. Next slide, please. Now here we have the unassigned fund balance in the general fund. And this is also a 3-year comparison. 2018, $7,527,093. Then it decreased to $6,794,232. Now there was an increase of $526,049 to $7,320,281 for the fiscal year ended 2020. I would like to present some percentages for these increases and decreases. 18 to 19 decreased 9.7%, and then 19 to 20 saw an increase of 7.7%. For the fiscal year 2020, there was no assigned fund balance for subsequent years' expenditures as there was in fiscal year 2019. The fiscal year 2019 reduction in the unassigned fund balance is the result of the $1,350,000 that was allocated to assigned fund balance for the amount of the fund balance appropriated noted in fiscal year 2020 budget ordinance. This amount was appropriated PAL bill funds for the Board of Commissioners approved paving projects. Next slide, please. And then here we have our unassigned fund balance as a percent of expenditures and transfers out, 19 to 20. You can see there's the decrease of 2%, which is comparable. Next slide, please. All right. Now here is the general fund summary of our revenues and expenditures. We like to compare them for 2019 and 2020. As you can see, 2019, the revenues increased by $1,243,862, and your expenditures increased by $2,316,180. In fiscal year 2020, revenues are under expenditures by $1,259,998. I would like to note that these numbers do not include the other financing sources, which are your transfers, your debt proceeds, and then your proceeds from sale of equipment. If we did include those, the net change in fund balance for the general fund is right at negative $884,316, which was noted earlier in the presentation. I would like to go into the 3 largest revenues and expenditures further in the presentation. However, those are going to be 3 largest revenues are ad valorem taxes, other taxes and licenses, and sales and services. And then we have our 3 largest expenditures in the general fund: public safety, general government, and public works. Next slide, please. So we're going to jump right into the ad valorem taxes, 2019 to 2020 comparison. As you can see, it went from $13,014,214 up to $14,475,189. That was an increase of $1,460,975 or 11.2%. What this increase is attributed to is the increase in property tax valuation in fiscal year 2020 due to the tax revaluation that occurred in 2019. Next slide, please. All right, and here we have our second largest category of revenues, other taxes and licenses. This amount decreased $99,333 or 1.8%. This is very comparable. Now, what this other taxes and licenses, it's based on the local option sales tax, utility franchise tax, and other taxes and licenses. Next slide, please. Finally, we have sales and services. As you can see, in 2019, there was $1,918,214, and then it decreased by $217,115 to $1,701,099. This was a decrease of 11.32%. And while we were performing the audit, we attributed this decrease primarily to the decrease in recreation programs revenues and community service, community center revenues. And that was something that we've seen with most of our units due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide, please. All right, now I'm going to jump into our three highest expenditures in the general fund. And here we have public safety. The 2019 amount was $9,401,919, and it increased in 2020 to $9,975,632. This was an increase of $573,713, or roughly 6%. What we attributed this increase was, it was primarily due to the increase in the police and fire department. Next slide, please. This brings us to the general government category of expenditures. As you can see, in 2019, it was $3,560,300, and then it increased comparable amount in 2020 to $3,646,513. This was only an increase of $86,213, or right at 2.4%. So by audit standards, that is definitely comparable to the prior year. Next slide, please. And finally, we have Public Works, which you can see there was a major increase in. 2019 amount was $3,767,666. And then in 2020, it increased to $5,490,411. This was an increase of $1,722,745, or 45%. So during the audit, it was noted that the increase in operating expenses in the street department due to several road projects that occurred during fiscal year 2020. Next slide, please. So in summary, I would like to guide you all to read the management discussion and analysis portion of the audit report. This is a great summary of the financial highlights. It will also give you a look forward to the fiscal year 2021. If you have any other further questions after this meeting, please feel free to reach out to Lori or Becky or Lindsay. They all three have my email address. I would be very happy to answer any questions if anyone has any further down the road. That being said, are there any questions right now?
Any questions for Mr. Allen? Saw several of you feverishly taking notes, so that's good.
I have a question for CJ if possible.
He's living pretty high on the hog, isn't he?
Yeah, CJ, what do you account for the 45% increase there?
Thank you, Commissioner Miller. Yes, so we had been saving up past year's Powell bill monies for a portion of those so that we could do a large reclamation project last year. It's really not cost effective to do small reclamation projects. The cost of mobilization is so high. So that's why we save up some every year to hold it for one larger project.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? And CJ, I was just teasing. I think you guys do a great job, and we're glad we're getting more of our roads paved. Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Allen? All right, thank you, sir. We appreciate that report, and glad to hear that our audit came back favorable.
All right. Well, thank you all. I very much appreciate your time, and I hope you have a great evening.
Thank you. Tell you, that's about as pleasant as it gets with an accountant, in my experience. So. Thank you very much. Move on to item 12B, receive the monthly budget report from Assistant Town Manager Becky Hawk.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board, once again. So I open up the beginning of the new calendar year with continued good news from our budget reports. So you did not receive a budget report in December since we did not have a meeting. So this is the first time that we are taking a look at the numbers with you since we last met in November, and we continue to have good news, which is fantastic. So I won't run through this word for word, but as we look at our largest area of taxes, our ad valorem taxes, to date, we have collected 70.5%. So this is the time period of the year where we start to receive more revenue than expenditures as folks pay their property tax bills that come due about this time of year. So we are trending slightly above where we were this time last year, which is good news. And it also represents over $750,000 more in receipts versus where we were this time last year. So that's promising, but we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. We have a full 6 months to go. And so what this does is it just makes us start to feel more and more confident that we will continue to weather the pandemic with a positive budget report. So we'll continue to keep an eye on it, but we do continue to have particularly good news in that area. Local sales tax is at 37%, which is also slightly higher than where we were this time last year. So despite everything going on, that continues to be trending in a positive direction. Recreation revenues, on the other hand, are understandably significantly down. And that is, of course, just due to the very limited ability to hold programming with the pandemic. But correspondingly, we have a decrease in revenue of over $200,000 to help offset that. So on the whole, we are doing okay in that line as well. Tourism tax revenue continues to be strong. I guess we'll attribute it to lots of takeout since folks are not limited or not able to dine in as much. But again, this has lasted much longer than we expected. So we know that we still have a ways to go. Investment earnings is one area that continues to basically be non-existent due to flat interest rates. So we do project that we will be about $50,000 shy on the whole for this line, but with how we're trending in other areas, we remain comfortable that we will be able to pick that up in other lines. Departmental expenditures are in line with where we were this time last year, so we don't have any concerns in any of those areas. And then just one note, if you noticed the economic development line was significantly higher in expenditures than normal, and that just reflects the expenditures related to our CARES Act grant fund programming that went to some of our local businesses and nonprofits. So this continues to be information that we monitor very, very closely, but we continue to feel cautiously optimistic as we move forward through the next couple months to get to the end of the fiscal year. And that's all I have, but happy to take any questions if anyone has them.
Okay. Are there any questions for Becky?
No.
Okay, hearing none. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Move on to agenda item 12C, consider use of $2 million for right-of-way acquisition for McKee Road. Susan Habina Woolley.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. A quick item for you tonight. If you recall, back in 2016, the board unanimously agreed to provide $2 million towards the improvement of McKee Road extension. We're calling it Segment A. It's to extend McKee Road from its terminus at Pleasant Plains over northward eastward to John Street, where we had completed another segment that same year. That money was coming from the Erickson contribution. And in the board minutes at the time, it said that it'll be moved, the $2 million is towards the construction of the road. Well, we all know what's happened with the DOT's funding here lately. And we were informed that when funding is released, McKee Road, the schedule was delayed 4 years. So instead of construction in fiscal year 21, it's construction in fiscal year 25. Well, we have $2 million contributing. So staff asked DOT, hey, we've got some money in this project too. What can be done to move up the schedule and get that back on? Because remember, we already accelerated it once, right? That's why we contributed. So what now? And the DOT said, well, if you move your $2 million to the right-of-way phase, which is the next phase, right? They had started right-of-way and then they had to pause it. Then they have money to move forward with that right-of-way phase. And then the project is more shovel ready for the construction phase for when money rolls out. And so tonight, staff is asking the board to consider doing just that, saying instead of the $2 million going towards the construction of McKee Road, that $2 million will go towards the right-of-way phase so that the NCDOT can get started on McKee Road sooner. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Susan, is it true, I would expect, like everything else, that it would be less expensive to purchase right away now than to wait anyway?
Yeah.
I'm not a real estate expert.
Okay, well, I would expect that, you know, in general, things increase in cost, so it might be wise to make that move. Are there other questions or comments for Susan? Commissioner McCool.
I guess this may be a dumb question, but what happens when we give them the $2 million for right of way? They do the right of way and they go to pave it and they have no money. And so it's still going to have to wait. I mean, is that still, I mean, there's a certain reputation that NCDOT has that, you know, we give them this money, they get started with it, and then come time to lay the pavement, they don't have the money. And I guess that's what my concern is.
That's a valid concern. And of course, that's a risk. And staff is basically doing traditional methods of let's just keep chipping away at it in the hopes that when they're ready to release funds, they look at the projects that are ready to be built first. That's a classic way of dealing with transportation projects, positioning yourself as ready to build. And so that's why staff would like to do this. You're right. We could get all the right of way acquired and it's still construction in fiscal year 25. That's a risk, but at least we're positioned in case there is money that's released and there's another project that doesn't have their right of way and isn't ready to move forward. So that's the recommendation from staff is for that, but you're right. It could still be the same.
Thank you.
Commissioner Miller.
Thank you, Susan. I think this is a brilliant recommendation. I appreciate your efforts on this. McKee Road, as all of us know, is the same as Ballantyne. You know, it connects to Ballantyne. It's also parallel with Ballantyne Commons. It's also parallel with 485. It's got a long-term plan and it's an important road. So I'd like to make a motion that we move $2 million, shift it from the construction phase to the right-of-way phase, and therefore enabled NCDOT to resume work on the acquisition for McKee Road Section A, otherwise known as U 4713A.
Second.
That was very thorough, Commissioner Miller. Thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Miller, a second from Commissioner Urban. We will take a roll call vote if there's no more discussion. Commissioner Bland,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner,
Yes.
Commissioner McCool,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So Susan, thank you for keeping us abreast of these opportunities as they become available. And let's, to Commissioner McCool's point, let's hope this thing does get built sooner rather than later, because it is a very key component to our long-term transportation plans in Matthews. Thank you.
That's right. We have the Dana factor, so
That's right.
keeping going on that. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Susan.
Thanks. We'll move on to 12D, consider grant application for electric vehicle charging stations. Leif Fitzpatrick.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor and the board. Thank you for having me this evening. Jay, can you go to the other PDF file, please? So I wanted to talk to you about the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality has opened up the program for applications under the Volkswagen settlement to install level 2 electric vehicle chargers. This is a rebate program, and being a municipality, we would be eligible for $5,000 per charging port. And we're looking at this as an opportunity to build our sustainable infrastructure. Go to the next slide, please. So the scope of the project, as I mentioned, we would contract with the vendor to furnish and install 2 charging ports. We would also, as part of the plan, the RFP is requiring that we maintain the charger for 5 years. So what we are also doing is having a network plan for 5 years and activation, as well as a 5-year maintenance contract and a 5-year warranty. And all that is partially or required by the RFP, whether we pay upfront or ongoing. We're proposing that we pay this upfront so that way we have a single cost and we're furnished for the 5 years so we can meet the requirements of the RFP. The next slide, please. So the location of the electric vehicle charger, we're proposing to put it in public parking between North Trade Street and North Ames Street. You can see where the little yellow dot is. That shows basically where is this just past Bank, where Bank Street comes in and the new connector there. And the next slide, please. One of the reasons why we chose this location, or a few reasons. One, it is centrally located. Another is we have an existing electrical service there, so that will save us considerably on the cost of construction. So we will use this electrical service here. If you'll go to the next slide, and what we will end up having to do is put in a charging port. This is just a quick rendering I did. We would take the center parking for the charging port, put up 2 bollards, and then we would have 2 parking spaces for electric vehicle charging only. This will allow the cords to not cross over to pass, so we'll have easy access for those that are parking. Next slide, please. So the project cost is approximately $20,000. I'm still waiting for an additional estimate from another company, and these estimates were provided based off of, or coming off of the state contract. The rebate, as I mentioned, we would, since we're installing 2 ports, we would get $5,000 per port. So we would get a rebate of $10,000. So our final impact would be about $10,000. The next slide, please. So the only other cost that we would incur would be utility costs, but that would primarily be driven by usage. If we have 2 vehicles that charge every day, it would be approximately $24 a month in utility charges. Initially, we would we'd be offering this as free to use. The way the market is right now, electric vehicle drivers are primarily only using areas that are free to use. There's not many people are charging at this point, except for maybe DC fast chargers. We will, however, with the software that is being installed, have the option to charge a fee at a later date. The next slide, please. So it was It's pretty straightforward. This is again a grant that would be a rebate with North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. After the end of the project, we would submit all the paperwork and the state would reimburse us for $10,000. And we're asking that you approve the town manager to submit an application for this grant. And I'm happy to answer any questions or take any suggestions.
I've got a couple questions, Wife. First, how often was the charging stations that we installed previously, how often were they used? Do we know?
I do not know. Is that the DC fast charger that's off Matthew Station Street?
Correct.
That's private use. I don't know if we ever received those numbers, and we haven't heard from them about when it would be operational either.
I asked because I don't think I ever saw a car charging there, and it tied up a couple parking spaces, and I never saw anybody using it. Secondly, sure, go ahead.
You had to respond to that. I don't have the numbers, but you are correct. The reason was we found out a couple of months ago, it was never registered with the national database of chargers. So people did not know it was there unless they just happened to drive by. So we assume once we have a charger put in that people will be using it because it will be registered.
Thank you for that information. So I have another question. So when I first started looking at the cost of these, I thought it was pretty expensive. And so, did some research on my own, and I found out that you can purchase a type 2 charger to go in your garage that runs on 240 volts for about $600. And so the $10,000 each seemed high. However, I did look at some other websites that said that's, within the range for municipalities to pay. I don't know why towns have to pay $10,000 when you can buy one yourself for $600, but I think there's some extra infrastructure and the warranty, et cetera. But the cost does seem effective. Can you address, or excessive? Can you address that at all?
Certainly. So the cost of the actual pedestal itself is just over $5,000. The additional cost, the installation is approximately $3,500. The activation, I can give you like the low bid that I have so far. This is for a 5-year networking and activation. That cost is $4,000.
Sorry, how much?
$4,000. That was for 5 years. But that's the warranty and on-site maintenance. So we have to have a maintenance plan also as part of the RFP. That's what they're requiring, a maintenance plan. And this would be, $5,000 to fix anything that goes wrong with it for 5 years.
Well, those that know me know I'm about as green as they come. I'm a tree hugger and an environmentalist, but I don't understand why we should subsidize an industry. I mean, nobody's offering free gasoline for me to go fill my car up. I don't know why the town would pay to have somebody get free electricity to charge their car. Just my opinion. Commissioner Bland?
Yeah, my question was, how long does it take to charge the vehicles once they, in other words, someone's running low and they need to charge their car and they're going to pull in there. How long does it take it to charge?
A level 2 charger would give you about 30 to 40 miles within an hour.
So is this considered a rapid, fast, or slow charger?
It's in between. The DC fast chargers will fully charge a vehicle in about, I think, 45 minutes to an hour. This is the level 2, so you get about 30 to 40 miles within an hour charge.
So you got to leave your car there for a pretty good while to get it charged up, unless it's just to get you home.
This would primarily draw Matthews residents and people within the close area to come into town and a spot where they can park their vehicles while they're shopping or visiting restaurants.
Okay, I was just curious what the motive. I mean, you go to your gas station, you fill your car with gas, and you got 300 miles to go. This isn't like that. It's like pretty much, I guess, if you're flat on empty or something and need to get home, this is what you'd use that for. Are or for somebody who's traveling through town who can't get home, they would need to park it there long enough to charge it up or something like that. I'm just trying to figure what the purpose of having it there is and what the benefit.
Correct. It wouldn't be a draw so much for people traveling cross country who are looking for a fast charge who want to refuel in 45 minutes to an hour. It would be more for local residents or regional draw.
Commissioner Urban, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. I'm kind of in the mayor's camp. I'd like to sort of see if you want to pursue this. There is a fee or something involved to offset the cost, because I don't think the town of Matthews should be subsidizing. We should encourage it, and that's fine, but I don't think we should be subsidizing those with electric cars. So there's got to be a compromise in there. I mean, we've had that station. I remember 1 or 2 cars plugged into it, but it'll ultimately come. So, but I'm in the mayor's camp in his conversation.
Commissioner McCool.
Are there any statistics you can show us of another municipality doing this and the usage of it? Because I think I'm kind of along with Commissioner Urban and Mayor Higdon is, if we do this, we spend $10,000 and 1 car uses it every month, kind of, hurts us. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if there's a significant need to spend that kind of money. There may be, and we may be completely wrong, but I'd just like to see that.
Yeah, I think the difficulty with that is municipalities are so different and the areas are completely different. Somewhere like Asheville may get higher usage. Somewhere in Durham may get good usage. So I mean, that's really hard to pin down without, identifying, how many vehicles we have in Mecklenburg County. Now, I did see a number that there are quite a few electric vehicles in Mecklenburg County, but I don't have that in front of me right now. I'm sorry.
Commissioner Miller. You're on mute.
Thank you very much. I reached out to the person in charge of our existing charging station. Our existing station we put in 2017, and it hasn't worked for just under a year and a half. And so I question the management of these and how will these be different. So I took an old email, which I shared with you last September, October, and reached out to Stan Cross of Brightworks or whatever it's called. And he said, I'm going to quote, they have finalized their negotiations with Blink and are in the process of closing the transaction. He anticipates the transfer of assets, meaning the station, to them within the next 30 days, and they intend to immediately remove the broken charger and replace it with a brand new one that will operate. There's certainly some growing pains in here regarding the charging station. I agree that there should be a nominal charge of $2 or $4 or whatever while they plug in and find something to do in the downtown of Matthews. But I don't think it should be free. And I welcome others' opinions.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner, you had a question, I believe.
I had more of like a stream of thoughts, I guess. Charlotte is considered part of the electric vehicle corridor for the state in the EV readiness template. Life, do you know more about that corridor? And it seems like Matthews is kind of right in a wedge of 2 corridors actually. And is this something, if we put these in, can we tie in with the state and get some state benefits for participating in that program?
I'm not aware of being able to participate how do you mean in the program? As far as we would have to register the vehicle through the program. Through the state initiative? Yeah, through the state and the federal database.
Okay. I mean, it just looked like in reading, there are some economic benefits to, I guess identifying as an electric vehicle corridor. It's not my language, so I don't understand it 100%, but being familiar enough to know that that's something that we as a town would look into if we have electric vehicle stations. But I also think we need to talk about this being in the context of Matthews having a Tesla dealership, which is unique for the area. I think there's a lot to be said for that. And, I mean, maybe that's another opportunity for partnership. It's a little bit different from a dog park partnership, but Tesla and the downtown Charlotte is about to become headquarters for a British electric vehicle company. And so I feel like, we're in the right place and have a great opportunity here. I understand that, $10,000 seems like a big ask. But we do subsidize other industries if we want to get down to it, we subsidize by having public parking all the time. And so maybe this is a way that we can attract, and the next level of green living, being responsible stewards of the earth. And so I just want to put that out there as well.
Thank you. Commissioner McCool, I believe you had a follow-up comment and then I took a few people in front of you, so go ahead.
I guess my thought is I think it's eventually going to be a necessity to have these chargers throughout the town I mean, in the next 10 to 15 years, this is going to become the norm of transport. But I do kind of like the idea of charging a fee, because if you use electricity in your home, you're expected to pay for it. So if you're using town electricity, pay a couple bucks. I mean, it makes the most sense. So you have the infrastructure there for the future, but you're offsetting a little bit of the cost. I guess that's where I'd feel the most comfortable.
Commissioner Bland?
Matt, I'd like to just comment on that, if I may.
Sure.
It's approximately 40 cents, depending on the rates, is the electricity that would be used in an hour. So that's what the 1 hour charging for one vehicle would be, is about 40 cents.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Bland.
Maybe somebody's already followed this up and I just missed it or something, but it looks to me like the town or someone should approach the Tesla dealership here in Matthews. And I mean, it would be in their benefit and it would certainly assist them in selling their vehicles to have these in the town where I would see that they would certainly, maybe even Tesla would even, pitch in some dough to get several of them around the town as a way of boosting their sales. And this is, I would think, a huge market for them because there's a lot of affluent people that live in Matthews. And so that might be a great, something we should definitely look at anyway, I would think, unless somebody's already done it.
Thank you. This is a follow-up comment for myself. I don't think it's sustainable to expect the town to support this industry by installing electric charging stations. Eventually, there's going to have to be something similar to a gas station where people come in and rapidly charge their cars. And it's not something that a municipality needs to be involved in. I don't think. I mean, we don't sell apples. This is, we're not a utility town. I don't know why we want to get in the business of providing fuel for automobiles. I don't think that's really in our purview personally. CJ.
Thank you, Mayor. So what a lot of places do with these is have this as like a station where somebody comes as a draw. Basically, you come, you plug in, you charge up, you go grab lunch, and then you come back, get your car and go on to wherever you were. So that's why a lot of places are doing it for free, is kind of like as a draw to bring people to that area. I understand the concept with the Tesla. Unfortunately, the type of charger that they use is not compatible. And typically Tesla dealerships also have their own bank of chargers just for Tesla vehicles. So I like the idea, but I don't think it would work in this case.
Well, let me just follow up if I could. Are you saying that Tesla vehicles can't use this type of charger?
So they can use this type of charger with an adapter, but if they have a supercharger at the Tesla dealership, they'll fill up their whole thing in 45 minutes and sometimes for free, depending on their plan. I don't know if they would go to
Okay.
this one.
All right, I was just curious how it works. I'm just ignorant about it, and I was trying to get a little knowledge there. Thank you.
So,
And Tesla has a pretty big network of chargers throughout the United States dedicated for their cars.
Hazen?
so a couple thoughts. I agree, like, typically we're not in the, market, let the market, free market reign, let it do its thing. It is interesting in an emerging industry, does government have a role? I'd probably argue yes, but we got to be prepared to back out quickly and let the free market in it. I do think that's kind of why they set up these kind of incentives that Life's found. This is from the VW debacle settlement, really. And it's rolling money. So it's kind of first come, first serve. I mean, I think charging's fine, right? I mean, even if it's a nominal amount of money. One other option, we could still reach out to Tesla to see, I don't know, okay, test drive it. Well, go get a bite to eat in downtown Matthew. I don't know what all it could be. They may say, no, we're good, but it does represent a unique opportunity. And I don't know, maybe they end up paying 80% of our match or 50% of our match or something. I think that's worth pushing on. And ideally we'd like to have it approved tonight, but just because we'll get at the head of the queue. But if it doesn't get approved, that's not the end of the world. And we can kind of do a little more investigation to see if there's a way we can offset some of that $10,000.
I really like electrical vehicles. I think they're the future. Fossil fuels are going to fall by the wayside at some point. But I'll remind everyone on this board that electrical vehicles also don't contribute to our PAL tax money via gasoline. So we're subsidizing a group of folks that aren't paying, they pay a real premium for that electrical vehicle, but they're not contributing to our PAL tax fund either. So again, I'm not against electrical vehicles. I think they're great. I think they are the future. I'm just not sure the town should be in that business. Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
I think if we're going to talk to Tesla, we should also talk to Arrival. They're the British company that will be headquartered in Charlotte. But I'm looking at a map, and the only vehicle charging station that I see on this map is at CPCC Levine campus. I wonder if that's through the county, and if that's something that we should also check if the county has their own bank of charging stations. Is that a program we could participate in? And the city of Charlotte, I know, when you go into the government center parking deck, they charge for parking there, but they don't charge for vehicle, right? So as we have bigger conversations about parking and the demand for parking, and if we're going to charge for parking, especially, premium parking, I guess that would be built into the cost of that, as if when you pay for your parking, you're also paying for these electrical vehicles. But I don't think that short term, we are relying on gas tax, but really how much into the future are we going to be relying on gas tax? It's not going to be for much longer. It's, before we know it, it'll be per mile or some other. So I don't know that this really cuts out of, or will cut out of our town's income as much as it will give people a draw to come park in Matthews and eat at restaurants. And that's how we'll get our money back, is through tourism funds and through sales tax.
Fair point. I just philosophically, I'm not for randomly contributing to certain industries more than others versus any other one.
But again, I would say, we provide free parking for businesses all over town, and for residents all over town with public parking, pay for our parking lots. If that's not subsidizing industries, then, you know, then I don't really know what is.
Well, the other heartburn I have, again, is I rarely, if ever, saw any vehicles parked in the station we have now. And when our parking is at such a premium downtown, I'm sure that I wasn't the only one that was mumbling a few words that probably wouldn't want my mother to hear when I drove around looking for a place to park and there's 2 spots empty with nobody ever using them. And now I hear that the charging station wasn't even operable for almost 2 years. I mean, that's bad. It sounds like there's a desire, though, to answer a few more questions and maybe instead of voting this up or down tonight, maybe get some more information. But to be clear, for me, it's not even about charging. I just don't know if we should be in that business. Why are we entering the electrical charging business? At the end of the day, the amount of money is not, out of $25 million operating budgets, is pretty nominal or almost insignificant from that standpoint. But it's just philosophically, for me, I'm having some hard time with it. But Life, maybe you can go back and get some additional information from Tesla and I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Garner, what was the name of the other company? Alliance or
Arrival.
I'm sorry?
Arrival.
Arrival. And I don't know, are there any other comments, questions? This was a good conversation, a lot of good comments, so appreciate it. Thank you, Life, for looking into this for us. And I understand that this is something we need to act on pretty quickly, so maybe we bring it back to our next meeting and then we can vote it up or down then. Is that good?
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Have a good evening.
Let's move on to item 12E, discuss fence height regulations. Mr. Camp.
All right, good evening. Exciting discussion about electric vehicles. I read recently that parity between electric car cost and gas vehicle cost will be reached in the next 3 years because battery prices have dropped so precipitously. So maybe a real affordable electric car for the masses is just around the corner, not luxury vehicles, but we'll hope. As everyone recalls, I think it was in December, we had 4, which is kind of a record. We had 4 variance requests that came to us at various properties, mostly on Township Parkway, related to fence height. We'd received some direction to do a little bit of research on this issue, and I'll be first to admit, was a little bit reluctant to consider modifications to our code based on these. There's some very particular circumstances here and really question, is this something we want to look at townwide? The more I researched this, it really became apparent that a lot of communities around the country do in fact consider taller fence height, particularly along thoroughfares and busy roads. I mean, if you've ever lived along a major 2 or 4 lane road, it can be obviously quite a nuisance with cars speeding by and noise and whatnot. We looked at a few communities, and I'm sure there are more. We've got over 500 municipalities in the state, but we found a few samples of what folks in North Carolina do, as well as other communities around the country. And I had some examples here of how communities treat this. It was common to allow an increase of roughly 2 feet in height, and also to include landscaping as an aesthetic compromise, I'll say. So I will say our current code is very typical, 36 to 42 inches for a fence in the front setback is pretty typical. And then in the rear yard or behind the house in the established rear yard, about 6 feet is a pretty typical number. We found that, and I've got I think I included it here in the memo. We found that Cary does a good job of handling this particular issue, and that for most fences around town or in Cary or here in Matthews, you don't need a permit to erect a fence. We strongly encourage you to have a survey done or locate your corner pin so that you know you're putting the fence in the right place. But other than that, we don't require a permit. It's not a structure. Cary requires a permit only if it's a fence taller than, I believe, 42 inches in the front setback. So you have to show where you're going to locate it, the distance from the sidewalk or right of way, and then what kind of landscaping you're putting in front of that fence. I also kind of added here, in this last paragraph, I feel is very important. I think if we want to maintain single family zoning along a lot of our major thoroughfares and minor thoroughfares throughout town, we should be cognizant of the impact it has as traffic volumes increase throughout town, that there are people living along these busy roads, and a lot of people might like a little bit more privacy and separation from. So I think this would probably be a fairly popular text amendment if this is something we embarked on. Now, I will say there are some drawbacks that we may want to look at. For instance, in downtown, do you want a tall, 6 foot stockade style fence in front of a historic property in the middle of downtown? Maybe not. But again, we've just done some initial research here, and also on rear yard fences. Our current height is 6 feet. I know, Mayor, you're kind of a tall guy. I don't know if this is like a home improvement situation where you can stand and look over your neighbor's fence, but I know that's an old reference, but it's still in reruns, right? Some communities do allow 7 and 8 foot tall fences, so that's also something that we may want to consider if we're going to kind of crack open and do a text amendment. And I see that we have 0 attendees right now watching the meeting, so my bad joke wasn't heard around the world. Really just opening this up for conversation and seeing what the board's appetite is. If you want to consider text amendment, staff's definitely willing to, well, that's our job, but we're willing to go to work on this issue.
Commissioner Miller.
Thank you. I planned my opinion in that I feel that 6 foot tall fences should be allowed on major streets with a 3 foot setback from the property line for plantings on the outside or towards the street, but not a 6 foot. One of our discussion points or one of our examples, maybe Cary, I don't remember which one, said you start at the property line, you have 6 feet of plantings, then the fence. I think it should be 3 feet and then the fence so you don't lose your yard. I feel that berms are okay. I agree rather that the finished side of the fence shall face away from the subject property, except when it separates a residentially rezoned lot from a non-residentially zoned lot or railroad right of way. So I support the 6 foot with a 3 foot setback for plantings between the property line and the fence. 6 foot is good for fence for me.
Thank you. Other comments on this? I'd just like to say that I also favor it. Pretty much, I believe what Commissioner Miller said. It seems reasonable. One of the things that we're doing, and I think even Jay Camp, you mentioned this. I don't know why I said Jay Camp. I could have just said Jay, and I think we would have figured out who I was talking about. You said you used to live on Chestnut Lane. Is that what it is? And the value of your property was actually decreased because you were on a major thoroughfare. So I question, what are we doing to our tax rolls? Are we decreasing the value of some of our properties? I know certainly for the individual that went before our adjustment board, and I think our adjustment board made the right decision based on our current ordinance. This gentleman has a 4-year-old child. I don't think I would want a 4-year-old child with a 3 or 4 foot fence on 51. I think that's just from a safety standpoint, it's unsafe. And I think it's reasonable to expect a little bit of privacy with that component of at least some minor landscaping as a compromise. You can't just throw up a wooden barrier, but you put some kind of planting that will leave to the capable hands of Jay to define what that is. But Commissioner Bland, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of putting fences on the front of people's property. I'm just not a big fan of them. I think another big thing that I see about fences all the time is it creates bad feelings a lot of times, especially on front parts of people's property. They end up in lawsuits all the time over that stuff, and it's a damn, you have surveyors out there and you go tying up the court system. If anything will make an enemy between two neighbors, it's a fence. And one of them claims it's 2 inches over on his property. You know what I'm saying? So anyway.
There's I think a Robert Frost poem about walls or something.
I don't know, but I'm just not a big fan of fences on the front, on like facing our main streets and stuff like that. On the rear of the properties, I'm not as opposed to that, but I don't like a 6-foot fence on the front of our street, on our streetscape.
Fair point, Commissioner Miller.
Thank you. Commissioner Bland, I'm only going to speak to the intersection of Sardis Road North and 51. That was a pretty lot that should have never been residential, but it was, and it was built, and someone from out of state bought it thinking they got a wonderful piece of property for a small amount. But they are on a major intersection at Sardis Road North and 51. And they need some relief in this commissioner's opinion. And that's really not a front yard worth a front porch 6 feet deep and a swinging chair or Adirondack.
I'm confused. Where are you talking about now? On Sardis Road or Sardis Road North? Sardis Road North's down there in Charlotte.
Sardis Road North and 51.
That's Sardis Road and 51 where the stoplight is?
No. Well, yeah, Sardis Road North. Oh, I'm sorry, Sardis Road and 51. You're right.
The T intersection there. Okay. And which piece of property are you talking about?
The one on the left side across from you.
Okay, so you're talking about the one where the fence where the tornado came in and knocked all that stuff down. Is that what you're talking about?
Maybe.
The one with the fence.
The brand new house that should have never been built residential.
On that corner, yeah, that we fought like 20, 30 years ago from ever letting rezone that piece of property. I know exactly what you're talking about.
All right. Well, someone from another state probably bought that not knowing it was a major intersection. And they might have gotten a good deal or might not have gotten a good deal, but I'm here to tell you that they need a fence protection from both intersections. And that's what I'm here to address. And if you can't get a survey before you put up a fence, then you could be incompetent. So you don't need to fight with your neighbor if it's on your property. And you dress it on the outside and you have 3-foot barrier with landscaping.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
I want to bring it back to being more of a general conversation than one person's yard, because it would affect many, many yards. And it depends on what we determine a thoroughfare, right? Because living on John Street, it's considered a thoroughfare. How would we determine, is it number of cars that pass by a day? Is it number of lanes? Are you thinking that far, or are you just finding out, should we go further with this conversation?
Yeah, I have begun to think a little further ahead. Most communities would reference if they have a comprehensive transportation plan on the books, they'll reference that and say if it's considered major thoroughfare, minor thoroughfare, arterial, there'll be some reference that would let you easily determine where these fences could be located. But for instance, John Street, let's say East John Street from downtown to 45 today is classified as a major thoroughfare, planned to be widened potentially. Maybe that wasn't a good example, but it's currently only 2 lanes. It carries a high volume of traffic, but it's only 2 lanes. But also think about that visual impact. I mean, those homes do not have the most gracious setbacks. They're not set very far back from the road. And you can kind of picture fences, maybe every 3rd or 4th house suddenly has a 6-foot fence in the front setback. So there are aesthetic concerns here. So I don't recommend this lightly, but I think it's something worth having a conversation about.
I also, Jay, want to bring, I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Garner, I'll let you jump back in, but they can put fences up right now that are 4 feet, and there aren't many fences on that road, that location.
Fair point.
They could put a 4-foot fence right now. Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Well, and with that, I mean, what's the setback on your front yard to have a 4-foot fence? And
So yeah, so the way the code reads today, you could put a 4-foot fence just right at the edge of the right of way, just inside your property line.
what is that, 15 feet? What is that?
Oh, you're talking about the front setback. No, you can still have a fence in your front setback. It can only be 4 feet though, and that applies to within a neighborhood or along a busy road. So you could come right to back of sidewalk and put up a picket fence if you chose to today.
Mr. Urban, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely, be careful what you wish for.
Mm-hmm.
It can get out of hand real fast, and maybe we need to do that proverbial half step back, look at minor thoroughfares, major thoroughfares, look at the speed limits on those roads, look at the view corridors on those roads as well, because I a 4-foot fence along John Street would be one thing, but a 6 or an 8-foot tall fence along John Street, to Jay's point, would be it'd be extremely bad. It'd be claustrophobic by that stretch of imagination. But on 51, you've got a very wide cross section, so a taller fence looks different than a 4-foot fence in a narrow cross section. So, I mean, I think this needs to have a deep dive. I'd hate to sort of just arbitrarily just say, let's have at it. I think Jay's second point about, communities allowing 7-foot or 8-foot tall fences too, could set a bad precedent there as well. But anyway, I think I don't have any problem exploring all this. I'm a graphic person, so I need to see these things. I need to see which roadways we're talking about, what the cross sections look like, what the speed limits are, and what that impact ultimately needs to be. And maybe it's more of a landscaping treatment combined with a fence that has to be always incorporated. But I think, yeah, we got to be very, very careful here. Very slippery slope.
Fair points, Commissioner Bland.
Close. I just think we got a really beautiful town, that people ride into our town, they say, wow, Matthews is so different from everything else around it. It's attractive. I just don't like the idea of people throwing up, like you say, on that corner lot, I mean, a big 6-foot fence around. I just don't think that. I think that won't be attractive. And if you start throwing up 6-foot fence there, well, the other guy gets to put a 6-foot fence up. It's just, yeah. I mean, I'm listening, but I just think that's it's going to really detract from the beauty of our town.
Commissioner Miller. And I'll get you next, Renee. You're muted. You're muted, Jeff.
Sorry. My question is to Jay. There's a brick wall on the Matthews side of Sardis Road. There's a brick wall on the Matthews side on 51 on that intersection as well. Is that a 5-foot brick wall?
The one that's associated with that development, the Meadows at Matthews, where the variances were requested, the one facing 51?
I thought there was a 6-foot wooden fence along 51 if you're leaving town before you get to Sardis Road. And then you have whatever that first street is where the brick mailboxes are and David Bland lives. And then you have a brick wall again. What height are those?
So I believe I know the first one you mentioned, what appears to be 6-foot privacy fence. That fence, by my measure, is legal. We do allow fences taller than that outside of the required front setback. So if that's zoned R20, I think it's zoned R20. If you go 50 feet back, then you can have your 6-foot fence. And I think that's what that property owner did. The brick wall, it was installed by the original developer. By code, it probably shouldn't be 5 feet. If it is, it probably should have been 4, but I haven't been out to measure it.
How about the one on Sardis, the brick wall?
Yeah,
that's what we're talking about. That's got to be 6 feet, I think, just by looking at it. It looks very tall.
It appears
Sardis
to
going towards where Hazen lives. If you just drive down Sardis on the right.
Correct.
That fence has got to be 6 feet, I think, isn't it?
But those are backyards.
Yeah, I think it is. But the problem is they were built behind those giant fir trees, not, or what are they called, or cypress trees that are in front of it. And when the tornado came down, it tore all those trees out. And so that's why that thing sticks out like a sore thumb now.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner, you got a comment?
Well, I was going to tell Dave, next time you're driving past that corner, I guess those fences have been there the 6-foot fences have been there for a couple months. So if they haven't stood up to you, then maybe they aren't as quite as much of an eyesore as you think they will be, but just be cognizant of it next time you drive past it and look at them. But I think the difference in what Jeff is talking about is the front brick wall on 51 is in the front yard, so it's lower and it's probably only 4 feet. And then the brick wall on Sardis Road is in people's backyards, and it protects their backyard from Sardis Road. So those are 6 foot. That's a 6-foot brick wall.
No, those houses that are there, they're on 51, they actually front on the other side. Okay, there's a road that goes down the back side of that thing, and so the big brick wall is actually the back side of their property.
Technically, the front side of their property. I talked to Jay about this. Technically, the front side is 51.
The front
That
side
is
of
the
their
front.
houses face the street on the back side. You can't get out on the front side to 51 on that. I mean, there's a brick wall that goes full length up through 4 houses there.
It's considered like an alley entrance, and not how they.
It's the front of their houses that they pull into, and that you walk in the front door of their house there. That's,
Yeah.
you can't access the backside of their house from 51.
It's their front setback, but the home is oriented. It's flip-flopped, so the front door is facing the alley at the back, but the legal front setback is facing 51.
Let me just ask this question of the board so that we can get some direction for Jay. Is there a general consensus or not to look at the possibility? Do we want Jay to go any further in investigating whether we want to do 6 feet? And for Commissioner Urban's point, we could be very prescriptive. We could, I think we do need to be prescriptive on where we would allow this. So is there a general consensus that we want Jay to continue his look at how we might craft this, or do you want him to stop, or what? I think Commissioner Miller, you want to go forward, correct?
Yes, sir. And I liked Commissioner Urban's comment about review how many lanes and what's the speed limit to define what used to be a thoroughfare, or, rather than go by NCDOT connector, thoroughfare, artery, whatever.
Commissioner McCool, what is your opinion?
I think it's worth taking a deeper dive. I think we've gotten a little too specific in our conversations here, focusing too much on a single property. I think it needs to be a really, really cautious moving forward to see what it would affect all over town. I think we need to kind of get more of a bird's eye view other than a really narrow view.
Mr. Whitley, you haven't spoken on this. What is your opinion?
Well, I'll just listen to everybody. I'm gonna put me a 10-foot all around my house here. But no, I think the 6 foot is good, and because I've got a fence on my backside, and I got a picket fence, 42 inch that runs part. I think it looks nice. My neighbors telling me to do too, but I haven't put nothing on the front. But I'm like John. I mean, if you got a thoroughfare, I think you might want something higher than 6 foot. I look at down at John Street, the fence, and 485 where they're building that wall there. Is that a 10-foot wall they're building, Jay? On 485 back up to the subdivisions?
It appears taller than that to me. I don't know how tall noise walls are.
That goes back to what John was saying. John Urban was saying, depending on the speed and the traffic and how much. So, but I'm good with 6 feet and 3 feet or 42 inches on the side.
Well, I think there's a consensus, Jay, for you to go craft us a perfect ordinance that would handle all these comments.
Good luck, Jay.
But I do think some good points have been brought forward, concerns on both sides, but in all seriousness, hopefully you can maybe benchmark some other communities as you have and come back with a recommendation. It sounds like, Jay, you may have changed your mind and be on the side of allowing it under certain conditions. Is that correct?
I think I agree with everyone that said we just need to tread carefully.
Yeah.
But I think it's something we should at least have a conversation about.
Yeah, as I think about John Street from the intersection where the Exxon station used to be up to 51, it would be a real travesty if 6-foot fences all of a sudden, sprung up on all those beautiful historic homes there. So we need to be very careful, but I do think there are certain areas that definitely need a 6-foot fence. So let's continue to look into it, and we'll maybe consider voting on it another time. When we have several months, I know we don't want to focus on this one individual, but his drop dead date is not till like May or something. Isn't that correct?
The board stayed enforcement until July. I forget if it's July 1 or July 30. Can't remember.
We have several months to consider and get this right. So thank you, everyone. Another good discussion. Enjoyed that one. Let's move on to 12F, discuss tree protection. We have a gentleman named Jay Camp that's going to.
Yeah, it's not even a zoning night, and you guys still can't escape. So this conversation originated, Mayor Pro Tem Garner and myself and Hazen to a degree have had some conversations about our regulations for tree preservation, ensuring that we don't have, ensuring we don't have accidents like occurred almost 2 years ago now along Monroe Road at the proximity, or I think they're now called the address at the Galleria, where the trees were inadvertently removed. That was obviously something that no one will forget fairly soon. So I've outlined here in the memo a couple of thoughts. Our UDO has about 23 pages dedicated to landscaping and trees. It covers everything from our tree canopy preservation requirements that range from about 5% to 20%, requirements for street trees, interior trees, and parking areas. We had a major overhaul of this that Kathy worked with Appearance and Tree on back in 06, 07. So it's been some time now. And then some subsequent updates in 2017 that added requirements for on-site supervisors and more requirements for pre-construction, as well as the potential for fee in lieu to remove trees and pay into the town's tree fund. Back in, I was going to say last year, but I guess 2019, 2 years ago now, we updated the approved tree and shrub list as well. As you've seen, if you've read the memo, we also have caps on our fines of $50,000 for the purposeful removal of trees. I think we've probably issued in the last 2 years, maybe plus or minus 60,000 in fines. So we had a few other sites that had some violations for illegal tree removal. So I think for this roundtable discussion is, I would really say, do people have any concerns? Well, there's another piece to this too, is tree canopy, right? There's an article that I included here about tree canopy goals, and that's something I feel like we talk about fairly annually here in Matthews as we see more and more development happening. Charlotte's backed off of their 50 by 50 goal a little bit, but they're also looking at ways to mitigate and also plant new trees. So this is a very wide-ranging topic, and just 1 or 2 pages. I tried to give you all just some quick bullet points because I know you don't read the code all the time. You're really just dealing with how these issues pertain to zoning cases, really, and it's usually about what that tree canopy preservation requirement is. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I really just wanted to kick off and facilitate a discussion about our tree and landscape chapter. And Mayor Pro Tem Garner, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that very brief overview I just gave.
Yeah, I mean, I just, when we have zoning issues, I think probably 10% of the emails I get bring up, maybe more than that, bring up our tree canopy and how we're losing trees. So I wanted to look into it and make sure the penalty was enough of a penalty to deter people, to deter developers from ignoring the code. And something we didn't talk about, Jay, and I don't know if it's okay to go into this, better understanding the way school finance operates. If we have this penalty of $50,000, it goes into the state bucket, right, and comes back through education. If we have a $50,000 fine, I'm just using that term, or that number, since that's what we have on this sheet, could we ask the county to work with us when the 50,000 trickles back down? They have the right to dictate capital funds for individual schools. So if $50,000 comes out of Matthews to the state back down to the school system, could our county commissioner say, hey, that money, that $50,000 came out of Matthews, let's put it into Matthews Elementary or Butler High School? Yes, sir, Mr. Buckley.
I just want to point out that the fine goes to the local board of education. It doesn't go to the county, and it doesn't go to the state.
Isn't our local board the county?
Well, no, the Board of Education, not the county. County is just a funding source for the Board of Education, but under the state constitution, fines and forfeitures go to your local boards of education.
Then I wonder if that's a bigger conversation for later down the road with the Board of Education. If
Yeah,
they
that would be with the Board of Education is my point. Yes, that's correct, Commissioner.
Thank you.
I mean, Mayor Pro Tem.
Good question.
Mr. Urban.
Is there, let's talk about the fines aspect of this just briefly. Is there any reason that the fines could not be changed? And I think Kathy and I, we talked about this many years ago, that instead of sort of a fee, you have to put back somehow in some way comparable cost and plus. This way money isn't being diverted to the local Board of Education and we're not getting the benefit of it. Is there another way of manipulating the fees in terms of a penalty and replantings?
Yeah, so we do require, if you remove, and I'm speaking off the top of my head here, if you remove 12 dBH of tree illegally that you've got to replace, I think at least that amount back what you put back in on the site, even though they may be smaller trees, obviously.
I mean, that's one way of sort of escalating that. Maybe we increase it. I mean, I think overall, John and I served on the Appearance of Tree Board when this was all being developed. We didn't have a lot of teeth in this and we didn't have a really strong ordinance. I think some of the victories we had were the new subdivisions and residential and street trees. I mean, huge win from the aspect of having that. And I know that we always, as we do multifamily projects, like to look back and look at the percent of tree save, open space, and kind of continue to tweak those numbers up. And I think we ought to continue to monitor that situation from that standpoint. So look at what we've done, look at what we can do, and continue to sort of ratchet those numbers up slowly but surely. But I also think, and I've been saying this for 10, 15 years, is there's the other carrots that you bring to the table with developers that go to this issue of the electric car and sustainability. Hey, Mr. Developer, you give me a green roof, I'm going to give you something else in light of this. Give me a pocket park and I'll give you a little bit more density. Give me more tree save and I'll do X, Y, or Z. I think the more carrot type of approach as opposed to sticks and bricks makes a lot of sense. So, I know we're having a lot of conversations about 4-story buildings, but you give me a 4-story building with a rooftop garden on it, I might be more considerate of that than just a flat roof with a rubber membrane on it.
Well, I will tell you this may not initially sound like it's focused on tree preservation, but a lot of communities and have for quite some time have been putting maximums on on-site parking. And, if you've got a large apartment development that comes in and they want to just pave over 3/4 of the site for car storage, that becomes the incentive that, look, you've got to hit, 25, 30% tree save, and you need to go structured parking because that's the only way you're going to get the numbers to work here to save the trees and provide the parking that you need for the development. So there's a lot of pieces to this that we would need to look at.
And that would also tamp a lot of rapid development too, because structured parking, we're kind of on the cusp in Matthews. We're not right there yet with the dollar value in the land, but you could also look at pervious versus impervious paving type structures, which is another way. It's not just all about tree save, but it's also about soil percolation, runoff, storm drainage, and things like that. So there's a lot of elements that the tree and landscape ordinance sort of play into.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
I don't want to de-emphasize the importance of trees, though. I mean, they're giving us the biggest environmental bang for our buck. And if we're ripping down mature trees at an alarming rate, we're losing a lot of air cleaning properties that a roof of sedums isn't going to do for us.
So
we can get into that debate. I get it, but I also know we plant a heck of a lot more trees than we actually take down every year from the forestry side. But that's near here and there. I get you on the tree aspect of it and preserving trees and large maturing trees and things of that nature. But there's that push comes to shove aspect of it in the development side. So we just have to sort of see how that shakes out.
Yeah, I think the fact that Charlotte's walking back their 50% tree canopy by 2050 is indicative of the fact that it's almost impossible with the level of development that we're having. I think there is for this board that we have right now, I think there's certainly with John and myself, a strong, and Renee as well, and probably others, a strong desire to save as many trees as possible. And I was considering, the heartburn that I've always had is that for a development like the apartment complex across from Family Dollar, and I don't know what the cost of that is, but say you have a large development like that and it's $25 to $30 million, a $50,000 fine, which is the highest that we are legally allowed to impose, and it's the largest one ever, I believe, the one we did on that development. It's like 0.2% of their budget. That's the cost of doing budget. That's the cost of doing business. They can just cut trees down and cut a check and be done with it if they like. So I think I'm a little frustrated. I think our boards historically have been very tentative in increasing our tree save requirements because we're afraid the legislature is going to slap our hand. But I think it may be time to move the bar a little bit more and try to save a little bit more. I do like the comment that Commissioner Urban made about how can we do that with a carrot instead of a stick. That's good too. I mean,
agreed.
But yeah, definitely. The more trees we can save, that's great. There's a great old tree on McKee Road on the Charlotte side. That big old oak tree, I think, is there, and I believe they're trying to save that, which I was happy to see. I had someone tell me that tree dates to probably the early 1800s. Huge, massive tree that they're going to try to save. It's right up against the road, and that's great. But I'd like to see us do more of that sort of thing in Matthews if possible. So something I think we still need to look at and to increase our penalties or rearrange our penalties and have that money go to plant more trees, even though public schools are a very good benefactor of that funding. It should go to plant more trees, obviously. So other comments, questions? Thank you, Jay. Another good discussion. We had a lot of good philosophical discussions tonight. I'd like to move on to the mayor's report. And I think we're going to get done sooner than we did during our last meeting. Thank goodness. I just have a couple quick things. Again, I want to thank Scott Banks from White Knight Engineered Products, is the name of his company, who donated several thousand masks. Again, reach out to Renee if you'd like to get some of those. Those of you that own businesses or are affiliated with churches or whatever, hand them out at churches. Just make them available. We want to really encourage people to wear masks whenever possible. We heard Ms. Harris say that there's more virulent strains of COVID, probably here in Mecklenburg County, that are easier to catch. So we need to be very careful about large public gatherings where people aren't wearing masks. So let's wear them whenever possible. I do want to give a shout out to the another thing that Ms. Harris mentioned, and that's the Atrium event at Bank of America Stadium. And that is this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And the last I heard, right before this meeting, there were still opportunities to get vaccinated. The group that's allowed to be vaccinated are 65 and older, any healthcare worker, long-term care workers and staff and residents. The way you have to make an appointment, you have to do that by having a My Atrium Health account. I set one up for my parents. It takes about 2 minutes to set an account up. And that's how you can get in line for this vaccine. So I think they still have some more slots available. So check it out if you have anybody that meets those requirements: 65 and older, healthcare worker, long-term care folks, workers and residents. Please go ahead and take advantage of that opportunity. One final thing I wanted to mention is last Friday, Hazen and myself, and I believe Commissioner Whitley, sat into our annual county and state meeting with our state representatives, county representatives, and basically I had the opportunity to speak, and I went over our legislative agenda. But one thing that's on there that I think we really need to push for is, and I think Commissioner Miller, you brought this up several times, and that's the ability for us to use our tourism funds more aggressively for landscaping and things of that nature, like they do in South Carolina. And our attorneys kind of giving me the stare down here. I realize South Carolina is another entity there, but I think we need to ask our legislators, and we did. I did bring that up. Is there any way they could ease that and maybe allow us to be a little more less restrictive, less prescriptive on how we can spend our tourism funds? Because I think we could do things like, improve our landscaping, et cetera, that would encourage tourists to come here, because it'd make it a nicer place to visit. So I did push that pretty hard with our legislators. So that's good. I believe that's all I have. If there's no questions on that, we'll move on to the attorney's report.
No report, Mayor.
Beautiful. Town manager report. Hazen?
I do have two things. One of them, Mayor Pro Tem Garner, I don't know who brought it to your attention, but there's a group out there called Non-Toxic Neighborhoods. And what they will do is give communities a $10,000 grant if they agree to to identify parks or landscaped areas and promise not to use Roundup, glyphosate, for 12 months. And so I talked to our staff. We do use, CJ, if my memory serves me correctly, we use about I guess probably 15 gallons, 6 things of 2.5 gallons of Roundup concentrate a year. I don't know if that's good or bad, but what we talked about is we have 2 community gardens and kind of the land around them. So we've committed to not using Roundup in that area for 12 months. And this group, Non-Toxic Neighborhoods, is going to send us $10,000, and then we can use it for anything we want to. According to her, you just can't buy Roundup with it. And what we feel like is the right thing to do is send it to the Appearance and Tree Committee, Advisory Committee. Let them talk about what they think the best way to deploy it is. We have staff that's liaison there, and we can put our 2 cents in as a staff, and it would come back to the board, for town board, you guys, for final approval. And then what I've asked our staff to do is to give some kind of report to the board in 2 weeks about how could we, is it possible to move away from Roundup in our use altogether? Now, it is a very effective chemical, and some would say a very, very dangerous chemical as well. So we want to look at that. There are communities, apparently Carrboro did it 20 years ago. They banned Roundup. Other communities have experimented with, like with Chapel Hill and some other examples, even across the country. So we want to explore that. I don't know how much more staff time or how much cost other alternative chemicals would be, or non-synthetic chemicals, but it sure is an interesting idea. It would be great to be maybe one of the first cities or towns in North Carolina to ban something like this as a government. But we're going to look at it for these 2 community garden plots, and then we'll expand that program out. The mayor and the mayor pro tem heard the same thing I heard. What do you guys want to add to what I've just said?
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Part of what the non-toxic neighborhoods adds to the package is training. And I think that's going to be an important component that that the staff of Matthews can have access to organics training. Also, I work with one of the organics crop specialists at NC State, and so we have access to more localized training and information, so we can find out, we can easily troubleshoot in relatively small areas and see how this works. I think it's really exciting.
Mr. Bland?
I guess you may know this or you may not. There's a giant class action lawsuit going on right now for people that contracted non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and we've handled, and it's a giant, huge class action, and there's different sections of the country where they have class counsel that handles, but it's a big problem. And Bayer bought it from Monsanto, and anyway, make a long story short, they've settled, and so there's a lot of payouts going out now to people that ended up getting non-Hodgkin's lymphoma from being exposed to Roundup. It's pretty serious stuff.
I have a couple comments to add. The origin of these funds is from the gentleman, I think a husband and wife team that started Stonyfield Organic Yogurt. It's that company who's funding this. I think Hazen certainly is aware, and I've looked at NC State's, they do a lot of studies with bees there. Bees are known to be, they get confused when they encounter Roundup and frequently can't find their way back home to their hive. So I know anecdotally, when they sprayed a lot of Roundup near Brightmoor, near my house, I had 2 entire hives of bees just disappear. And I don't know if it was because of Roundup or not, but they sprayed Roundup pretty heavily there. Duke Power did that year. So it's something worth considering. The other thing I want the board to consider is, Ralph Ramseur is a real perfectionist, and he has an expectation or a level of excellence that he tries to reach for the town. And my comment was, is it okay if we have a few weeds in some of our parks? What is that expectation level? Do we have to have, golf courses in our parks, or can we have a few weeds? Is it okay? And I think it's okay. Also, the effectivity of some of the organic alternatives have greatly improved over the last few years. And I've talked to Ralph about this back when I was on the tree board. And for a longest time, there was nothing that could even touch Roundup for the effectivity. It just worked. It did a great job and nothing else did. But there's a lot of new products that have come out in the last 5 years that are claiming effectivity approaching, above 90% as effective as Roundup. So if there's organic alternatives, why wouldn't we use them? If it's okay if we have an occasional weed here or there. So that's it. Just wanted to share it was a really interesting meeting that we had, and I thank Renee for bringing it to our attention. It's a good opportunity for us to see if it might work for us.
All right, so the second thing I think Renee brought to our attention too, if somebody else did, please lift it up, but we found out last week, maybe Friday, that Windsor Run with 450 residents and 150 staff has fallen through the vaccination cracks. While they are called a CCRC continuing care residential community, retirement community, they don't have any skilled nursing or advanced life care. That's not the right word, but unlike Matthews Glen. And so, they didn't get high on the list, as high on the list. And so their conduit is CVS and Walgreens, and they're saying they're full, or they don't have any appointments until May. And it's kind of a weird situation. So we convened a number of people like Gibby Harris or her staff. Rachel Hunt was on the call. We had folks from the Novant Center here, and also the administrator for Windsor Run, and the state of North Carolina, by the way. And North Carolina does have a very centralized system. I am a little worried as we get more vaccinations, if this kind of centralized system is going to get bogged down. Talk to Chief Kinneberg about this, and also the hospital. Like, is there an opportunity maybe for Matthews to figure out a way to open up a site like over at Sportsplex and just crank through people? Now, that's easy to say that logistically. Kinneberg estimates like we need a minimum of 30 people. If you ran one of those every day, you just can't run 30 people for 12 hours a day. So there's some real logistical hurdles, but I don't think we should take it off the table. But we did work very hard, and with only 120,000 doses coming to the state of North Carolina and only 2,000 a week coming to Mecklenburg County, and that process sounds like it's going to change based on density. But we did work hard to try to figure out if there's a way to get Windsor Run vaccines. We were not successful, but we did lift it up. And I think we tried to put it on as many people's radar as possible, because I think this would be a black eye for the state of North Carolina or whoever to have 450 easy to vaccinate residents and 150 staff, like in one kind of a one-stop shop. But right now they are they're not being served. So other folks, yeah, please add to that conversation.
Hayes and Siskiyou Y is right behind them, and they're one of the sites that's given it. I want to think, I'm not sure if it's Novant that's got Siskiyou Y, if it's Atrium, but Siskiyou Y is, I think it's Novant, because my doctor was telling me that. But I will see if we can get Novant to let them go right there to Siskiyou Y.
So Novant was on the call. Two people actually from Novant were on the call. They talked about the CVS at Siskiyou area, but they did not talk about the Siskiyou Y itself as a vaccination location.
It is. I mean, my doctor recommended me to go there, but I couldn't get an appointment there. But there'll be something to look at. And you might be right. It might, I could be wrong, but she did tell me that that's where the first one that I was looking at was Siskiyou Y.
Renee?
I think that they provide other services there, and that's why they don't consider it a vaccine clinic. But I guess the residents of Windsor Run are invited to make appointments wherever they can find an appointment. The question is, does it make sense for 450 at-risk people go out to the community and risk bringing it back to Windsor Run? That to me that's a lot of risk that doesn't need to happen. And how can we find a way to get it all to happen in one place?
Hey, Hazen, I got a number here from Mecklenburg County at the Bojangles Center, and I went online. It's a telephone call, 980-314-9400, and option 3 when it comes on. But I called them this evening, and I mean, as soon as it rang, the woman picked up. I wasn't getting over recording. She took my information, like how old you are, your address, what race you are, and she put me on a waiting list, but she said I was number 900. But at the same time, she was saying that they're moving real quick. So that's a number that those residents could call there and at least get set up at Bojangles when the time comes. Because I really believe in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to get influx with Johnson & Johnson and all those 2 other vaccines coming in. I think it's going to really accelerate it, but at least they'll be on the list. That's something.
And I will reach out to the executive director and tell him about that phone number. Thanks.
But that's Mecklenburg County, and now what I heard Gibby say that it's 2,000 for Mecklenburg County, not the Atrium nor Navant. They get a separate dose as well too. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
That's correct.
That's what I thought too.
Let me just make a comment here real quick. I know it's getting late, but when we were on the call with everyone, there was a lot of, it's this guy's problem, it's that guy's, everybody pointing fingers. And I think all of us have done a pretty good job of thanking staff when they've done a great job. And here I want to call out our town manager for not accepting that and being more aggressive on behalf of our residents. And Rachel Hunt as well. She said, trust me, I'm spending a lot of time and I'm feeling the pressure. But I think Hazen called this meeting, ratcheted up. I think he did a really good job for our community.
Thank you.
To Renee's point, we don't want 450 people that live in a congregate living center to individually go out and get 450 shots at individual places and possibly bring back COVID with them. That's kind of ridiculous. And I think Hazen made the comment, okay, if you want this to fall through the cracks on a technicality, that's fine, and I think he got a few people rattled and thinking about the consequences. So thank you, Hazen. Great job. We really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll get a better solution soon. Got anything else, Hazen?
Yes, sir.
I have one question for Hazen. Hazen, we widened Trade Street in 2015, or we began that process. We widened the bridge in 2017 or 18 and began that process. And I reached out to you. I appreciate the gateway retaining wall and the plantings. Do you have any update on when the either Welcome to Matthews or Matthews welcomes you, however it's going to be stroked, when that sign might be applied to that intersection?
So CJ, I talked to Life about that. I think he was going to reach out to the designer. I think we got to get some, I don't think anything's designed. CJ, do you know if that's the case?
So this is, and I'm sorry, I'm not up to date with this, but I don't recollect that being part of it. I thought it was going to be plantings, because if we put in a sign, we would have to get the DOT's permission. They would not allow any sort of physical structure in their clear zone. It looks like Life is still on. So Life, do you have more information on that?
It should have been a simple sign, either painted or backlit aluminum, which wouldn't create a barrier on the wall or above the wall. Just a basic lettering.
And it should also say, any issues? Jeff Miller lives here, with an arrow.
And the mayor lives down the street.
No, that's not
Yeah, really. All right, so Commissioner Miller, we will check into that and find out if there's, how much option we have. It is right on top of the right of way, I think, to CJ's point, but let's see what we can do.
Okay.
Well, what's there is a huge improvement over what it looked like previously, that's for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, seeing no other questions or comments, I think we'll move on to adjourn. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Have a second. I have a motion from Commissioner McCool, a second from Commissioner Miller. Roll call vote. Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Yes. Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Mayor, before I say yes, I want to tell the board, I want to thank our mayor. Even though we were not able to have the Martin Luther King service as we normally do, but the mayor did come to my church and he did present one of the young students, Faith Smith, who is a graduate Independence High, and she's going to Winston-Salem State with a 3.7 GPA in sports casting. Is that what she's majoring in, John?
Yep.
And so, but the mayor came and if you want to go to my website and go back to the third Sunday, you'll see that presentation where he did and me and her present a check for $2,500 from Martin Luther King Scholarship. This is our 5th year being able to do that, partnering with the local churches, Matthew local churches who give this fund. But I just want to thank you, Mayor, for coming and being a part of that as well. And also, we just finished our 4th Corona testing site at Mount Moriah. Those of you who are interested, it's the 3rd Thursday in each month going forward. And also, as Chief was saying, the numbers did go down. We were averaging over 300 cars coming. This time we had 150, which is saying that people are getting appointment for vaccination. So the testing is going down, but they're getting the test. But I just want to thank y'all and wanted to know that the mayor was there and we were very appreciative of that too. With that being said, yes, I vote that we adjourn.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Commissioner McCool
Yes.
and Commissioner Miller.
Yes, sir.
And I vote yes as well. Thanks. It was a good meeting. Had a lot of good conversation tonight. We'll see y'all soon. Be safe.
Stay safe, everybody. Love you guys.
Love you all.
Safe, everybody.